Hello, everyone. I'm Dimple Bindra, your host for the first episode of Might As Wellness. With suicides of celebrities Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, Tina Turner's son, Craig Turner, and major shootings all around the country, poor mental health is one of the major issues that is gripping the country. A recent article in Time magazine says that 45,000 people died by suicide in 2016, making it the 10th most common cause of death in the country. The problems most frequently associated with suicide, according to the study, are strained relationships, life stressors, and often involving work or finances, substance use problems, physical health conditions, and recent or impending crisis. The most important takeaway, mental health professionals say, is that suicide is an issue not only for the mentally ill, but for anyone struggling with serious lifestyle problems. So what can we really do about this? We all have a choice to live a healthy and peaceful life, and let's find out the answer from our expert today, Ronnie NewMan. She is a Harvard University trained, award-winning researcher, educator, and published author in the field of mind-body medicine. She has spoken internationally on 4 continents and for organizations such as the United Nations, the World Bank, the National Institute of Mental Health, and many medical and nursing schools. She has been interviewed by such diverse media as Newsweek and Yoga Journal, and has been quoted in the U.S. News and World Report and Prevention magazine. She also appeared on PBS, NBC, and CNN International, and was featured scientist in the epic documentary The Truth About Memory Loss, Reducing, Repairing, and Reversing the Signs of Alzheimer's and Dementia, which was viewed in 115 countries worldwide. Her most recent publication on the effects of meditation on cardiovascular and mental health was conducted in collaboration with the Western University Schulich School of Medicine in Ontario and published in the British Journal of Psychiatry. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ronnie NewMan all the way from Florida. Ronnie, how are you doing today? Welcome to Might As Wellness.
I'm wonderful, and I want to thank you for giving me this platform to be able to share with people that which I'm so passionate about. So I'm grateful to you. Thank you.
So Ronnie, I would like to touch upon a few of the topics today, which is reducing violence in our country, suicides and gun shootings. You also have some intriguing scientific data on a novel approach to our epidemic of violence and aggression, and that can be impacted by meditation. So how can meditation help keep people from erupting into violence?
This is a great question, and I think as the mental health community embraces this, we're going to see a mental health model which is more compassionate and more effective at the same time, and also more cost effective because, as we know, a huge portion of our national budget goes toward mental health. So, to answer your question about how it can help, if just talk therapy or just the desire to be calmer, to be healthier was enough, then we wouldn't need psychologists, we wouldn't need psychiatrists, Valium would be non-existent. So we know that the gold standard of Western treatments doesn't seem to quite be doing the trick. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first is that meditation does something that drug therapy cannot do or does not do up until this point.
Absolutely.
And that is that there's 2 aspects of our brain functioning and of our nervous system. There's the stress response, which we all know about, the fight or flight response, the negative emotions, all of that. And then there's the positive aspect, the rest and digest, the relaxation, all is right in the world, like when you and I are sitting and having a cup of herbal tea. Now, the situation with drug therapy is that while it does blunt the stress response, and in some cases it can blunt the suicidal ideation in some people, it does not at the same time increase the well-being that a person experiences. So people say they often feel like zombies.
Got it.
That when people are joyous and happy, they're not violent. People are violent out of frustration and aggression. And so if we can increase wellness in people, automatically the negativity will go down. That's one aspect. So the other aspect of reducing violence is being able to control our emotions. You know, most criminals report that something just came over them. They quote blew their stack and it, quote wasn't them, right? And we know too, even like when we yell at our kids or yell at our boyfriends or girlfriends or the librarian who hasn't done anything to deserve it. It's just these impulses come. We can all relate to it. Now, what happens when people meditate is that the area of the brain, which is right back here behind our forehead, which is the prefrontal cortex, it's our most sophisticated aspect of our brain. It's also called the wizard brain because it's where creativity and thinking and impulse control is. And what happens is when people meditate, the impulse control becomes much stronger. So we stay in the reasonable, rational, problem solving, solution oriented aspect of our brain rather than the reactive part of our brain. In addition to having a desire to find solutions, is that we're creating a physiology in the brain that supports nonviolence. Because you can't have nonviolence just as a philosophy. The body is totally involved in that.
And you also cited research showing the effects of meditation on the community and the nation. There was a rise in celebrity suicides, like Anthony and Kate were one of them. When I heard the news, I was not so surprised because I understand what people can do when they are not in the right state of mind. But the world was in shock mode. 45,000 people committed suicide just in the US alone. So, how can we help the people that are suffering from such thoughts or mental illness?
Oh, this question really hits close to home, Kate, because I have a very dear friend, one of my group of college buddies, who committed suicide.
Oh,
So
no.
yeah, it's very close to my heart. Well, the first step obviously is like what you did, is to know that we're not alone and to take some action. And this is where community comes in. It's one of the many things that community can do is when somebody, and this is just common sense, no
Right.
research science is needed, that when somebody is hurting, we go and we soothe them. We're actually, this is really a cool factoid, that as a species, we're wired for altruistic behavior. We're wired to help each other. And the Bay Area, of course, probably knows this better than most places. And what happens is when we perform altruistic activity, it stimulates the same pleasure center in the brain that responds to opium. We cannot help, no matter how much you say, I'm doing this and I don't want anything in return. We cannot help but get a return for helping other people. It's not the alpha male who necessarily has the greatest survival. The old idea of Darwin's survival of the fittest. That's only part of the picture, that the individuals with the strongest social connection are the ones that survive because they're the ones who have other people looking after their back. What can people do? The first thing is, in your experience, when you volunteer, it feels so good. So volunteer for anything. Doesn't matter whether it's holding babies, in hospitals who don't have parents, or one of the things that I do, I live by the beach. I live in Florida. And when I go to the beach to give back to nature, my friends sometimes laugh at me. I always commit to spending at least a half hour picking up trash on the beach. Whatever it is, get out in nature and pick up garbage. Walk dogs who need fostering, help an old lady across the street, providing she wants to go across the street, that is. So the first thing is that we do that. The second thing is really to learn a meditation practice, because what we find is that as a species, we have different areas of our brain. We talked about the prefrontal cortex, and there are different areas of the brain that are responsible for processing different emotions. And what we find is that when people meditate, the area of the brain responsible for happiness and other positive emotions actually begins to grow stronger. And that part of the brain responsible for, quote, negative emotions starts to wither. Negative emotions are worry, anxiety, all of those. They actually start to wither because as a species, we're actually, the brain is chemically supercharged to experience negativity. Because, if you go out in an area where there's tigers and lions and drunk drivers with SUVs that are going to run you over, you need to remember that a lot more than a lovely day when I say, oh, my friend and I, Dimple, went to the park and we had some organic cotton candy grapes and got a
Mhm.
great tan, it was wonderful. We need to remember the negative more. However, once people start meditating, very quickly the brain starts changing. Within a
Yes.
matter of weeks, it starts changing so that the wiring responsible for happiness and other
Mhm.
positive emotions grows bigger right here. And that wiring responsible for negative emotions begins to wither. And one of the main researchers from UCLA Center for Neuroimaging said, this may account for the quote, and this is a I quote I use all the time, for the outstanding ability of meditators to handle whatever life throws their way. Meditating actually changes the brain and it changes the body chemistry as well. One of the other things is that depressed people
Mhm.
have abnormally low levels of a usually have abnormally low levels of a hormone called prolactin.
Right.
And what happens is often within a matter of a week or so, the
Mhm.
prolactin levels, that well-being hormone, begin to rise. It's not that I have a great therapist, although all of those things are fantastic and I
Mhm.
recommend them all. But
Mhm.
still, it's like we have our own internal pharmacy that knows how to set us right and set us back to where we really want to be. And meditation taps into that more
Mhm.
powerfully than anything I've seen.
So, I also wanted to ask you about meditation being used in the treatment of depression, and that the results of your team's recent research on depression were so impressive that they were published in the British Journal of Psychiatry. And out of 900 entries, won an award, right, for the best poster presentation at this year's World Psychiatry Congress in Berlin. What were the findings?
This is a great question. Well, what we did is we took a group of people, group of seniors, 60 and above, because
Mhm.
they're the hardest ones to treat.
Mhm.
Depression is hardest to treat in late life. And so we had a group of patients who had not been helped really after 3 months of medication and or psychotherapy. And
Mhm.
what we did is we randomized them, which is of course the gold standard in research. We randomized them to continue treatment as usual, gold standard in the West, drugs and psychotherapy, or to add this effortless meditation that the our foundation teaches
Mhm.
called Sahaj Samadhi meditation. And what we found was that at we tested them at 1 month, at 3 months, and then again at 6 months. And we
Mhm.
found that with treatment as usual at 3 months, there was a 9% remission rate. When we added the Sahaj Samadhi, this particular meditation, it bumped
Mhm.
up to 54% complete remission. They had a significant reduction in their symptoms, whereas the treatment as usual group had the ones who did not remit had no significant reduction in their symptoms. It's
Okay.
amazing. Just adding an effortless meditation practice, 20 minutes twice a day. And can I share another factoid about that when people don't have time?
Sure.
The human brain, by the time we reach 26 or 27, the human
Mhm.
brain starts to atrophy. It continues to develop until about 26, 27, and then it starts to decline. It starts to atrophy. And by the time a person reaches 40, the human brain atrophies at 5% per decade. That's huge. Now, while that's common, there are ways to change that. And one of them is meditation. Meditation has been found to slow,
Mhm.
stall, and even reverse age related brain degeneration.
Of
So I
course.
don't know a single person on earth who doesn't need their brain to be productive, to be happy, to have great relationships,
Mhm.
which is why productivity increases when people meditate. They actually find research shows that happy, relaxed people, like people who meditate, are 37% more productive. You know, when you're in the, when I talked about impulse control, when
Mhm.
people are stressed, what
Mhm.
happens is that they go from the wizard brain, the prefrontal cortex, and this is where creativity and innovation is the only place it happens. They go from here to what's called the lizard brain. People have probably heard of the reptilian brain, the lizard brain, which is right here above the
Mhm.
brainstem.
Got it.
And there is no creativity, there is no innovation when you're in your lizard brain. So if you
Mhm.
want to stay out of the lizard brain and you stay in the wizard brain, and that's where creativity and productivity come, you got to meditate. In this world, you got to meditate. That's it.
Do you have any explanation for how meditation could outperform drug therapy?
Okay, well, the first thing I want to say is that I am not a medical doctor, so I would never tell anybody to stop their medication. And medication has a place in the world. When people take medication, it blunts the stress response, the sympathetic part of our nervous system, but it does nothing to increase the well being part of our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs don't do that, but meditation can. And so, because of that, it affects, and the two of them together, the stress response and the calm well being response, they form what's called our autonomic nervous system, which influences every organ and system in the body. And they're like a seesaw. So, when the stress response is high, the well being response is low. And so the entire physiology of the body changes when the stress response is up. There's stress hormones, stress chemicals, stress, lack of thinking, lack of creativity. When the well-being part is up, there's joy, there's enthusiasm, there's vitality, there's more energy, because the stress response zaps us of our energy. And people who are depressed need energy to get and do something. So when you meditate, it balances this out again. And drugs don't do that. Drugs only blunt the stress response, but they don't induce the well-being response. So you're left feeling numb and tired often.
People suffering from depression or mental illness, when they start practicing meditation, after how long do they see the results that make them feel better again?
What kind of meditation they do. And it also depends on other aspects, like if they're still eating, just junk food.
Right.
It may take a little while longer than if they're eating, delicious seasonal fruits and, fresh food like that. Having said that, what we see in the research is that in as little as 2 to 4 weeks, often at 30 days, unlike drug therapy where you need to leave at least 6 weeks to see whether it's working or not, with meditation, it starts to kick in pretty rapidly. And it's the same for anxiety. It's not only depression, clinical depression, but we see the same result. In fact, in the research that won the award, we also found, because many depressed people are also anxious, it's like they're dance partners. They usually show up together. So we also looked at clinical anxiety, and we found that the anxiety levels came down significantly too. With no follow-up, it was sustained half a year later. It wasn't just some temporary high or some placebo effect, because half a year later with no follow-up, people were still not depressed. They were happy, they were enjoying their life, they're having a high sense of well-being. So it lasts, because what's found with meditation is that the results are cumulative. They grow stronger and stronger over time. So it becomes self-reinforcing. Ravi Shankar is a globally renowned master teacher of meditation. He is the custodian of an ancient lineage of meditation, and he will be providing people in the Bay Area with the direct experience of effortless and deep meditation. The program called Unveiling Infinity is a very special program. According to the ancient scriptures, there are 112 different ways to have deep meditation effortlessly. The breathing techniques help very much, as do the meditation techniques that he is the custodian of, because what they do is they restore they do two things. Number one, they restore the homeostasis balance very quickly, so that the well-being response is kicked in more than the non-well-being response. And it seems to work very, very effectively, and it reaches all the way down to the level of our DNA. Research out of the University of Oslo Department of Microbiology found that just doing the breathing practices positively impacted 97 of our genes. So not only does it balance the system, but it increases our capacity to experience happiness, contentment, peace, and other positive emotions by literally effortlessly culturing the physiology to produce those hormones that make us stronger and healthier and more energetic and happier. And at the same time, reducing those chemicals like the stress hormone, which cortisol, which results in poor resistance to disease, poor overall health, more depression, more suicidal ideation. All of those negative things diminish effortlessly. And the beauty is that whether a person is an experienced meditator or a brand new meditator makes zero difference. And that makes it different from some of the other practices that people may try, which are more difficult. When you're in a trying situation, you want something that's effective, that's fast, that no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in the Bay Area or Bombay, it's going to work the same. Satisfies all of those criteria, which is
Awesome.
really important. And plus, results come quickly from the prolactin levels I talked about increase in depressed people from the very first session. The event is 2 days. It's 4 hours each day. It's very comfortable. It's 10 to 12 and then 2 to 4 in the afternoon with a great lunch break. And you can find more information at beinfinite.me. And I love that infinity. Who doesn't want to feel experience in a lifetime? I have traveled to India 5 times to meditate with this gentleman.
And Ronnie, thank you so much for being on our show today. We really appreciate your presence.
Namaste. Thank you.
I think this gets back to what do we need to be teaching people? How to manage breakups, job stresses, family problems. What are we doing as a nation to help people manage these things? Because anybody can experience those stresses. Anybody. If you are one of those, contact me at dimple.bindra@instavital.com. Research and study have been proven that a large group of practicing meditation is associated with decrease in social violence. For the period 2007 to 2010, when there was a sufficiently large group of 1,725 meditators, statistical analysis found a significant decrease in both the national homicide rate by 21.2% and urban violent crime rate by 18.5%. compared to trends during the baseline period of 2002 to 2006. The energy and positive vibrations generated by so many people meditating together will be potentially healing for the community and collective conscience in the wake of recent shootings, violence, and unstable political climate dominating the country. Now, more than ever, it is needed to create a shift in the alarming trends of violence, irrationalism, stress, and anxiety plaguing our society and culture. Bay Area will be witnessing one of the largest meditation events ever, with nearly 3,500 people congregating from different parts of the world to take part in programs led by the greatest exponent of yoga from India, global humanitarian and peace ambassador Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. The programs will be held from July 21st to July 27th at several event venues, namely the San Jose Convention Center, Hyatt Burlingame, and San Mateo Event Center. Stay tuned for our next episode of Might as Wellness as we cover more topics that helps and enlightens humanity. Till then, namaste. This show has been sponsored by InstaVital. Visit instavital.com and receive a private session with me, Dimple, when you book an event or wellness sessions for your company. Thank you for watching.